What's going on, everybody? It's your next Thunderdome Puckcast. Today, we talk about Brayden Point's contract, the Lightning struggling in the preseason, some of my 2019 predictions, and of course, closing it out with some beautiful, beautiful jersey releases. Let's hit that intro. All right, everybody, good afternoon. It's your host, Moose, for the Thunderdome Puckcast live from the $10 Sports Man Cave. It's definitely a typical Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon here. We got animals running around. I'm on animal duty this morning, so if you see them poke their heads in and out, uh, feel free to say hi. Oh, there's my cat running in and out. Uh, Really excited for episode 2 of the podcast. We're getting closer and closer to the regular season start. I think one more preseason game left for the Bolts tonight against the Florida Panthers. The Cats will be finishing out at home. Then season starts right next Thursday, I want to say, against those very same Florida Panthers. They'll play a home and home. So I think at this point, we'll play 5 games in a row if you include the preseason against the Panthers. So we should be pretty well versed and prepared for the Panthers. They gave us a spanking a few days ago with both full squads starting 6-3, and I believe we took the last one 4-2. So again, we got one last one today before we'll make final cuts and getting into the regular season on Thursday, home opener against the Panthers. So let's get right to it. Yeah, I'm sorry if you see my eyes poking up. Got the Texas Tech Oklahoma game going on back and forth. Typical Big 12 game. Texas Tech about to put 7 points on the board to get it to 24-14. But let's get going with our Thunderdome Puckcast. Talk about the Lightning. Of course, the biggest story for the last week has been Brayden Point Watch is finally over. I was getting a little nervous. We were talking about it a little bit on our Puckcast last week and on our episodes of $10 Sports and Balls, Bros, and Brews with Emrod. Definitely some concerns about getting the job done. This is maybe the latest the Lightning have ever gotten with a free agent, a restricted free agent, right against the line there, against the wall of getting close to regular season starting. But Brayden Point did sign, and I'm happy to say he signed for a great contract. If you remember last week, during the week, of course, we saw Louis Domingue get wavered and actually clear waivers, so he's down in Syracuse. He's not very happy about that. But we had to clear some cap space, and I don't know if we were getting ready to offer as high as $8 million. I think they came to a great agreement. Average annual value for the next 3 years of $6.75 million. I think that's a phenomenal deal for both sides. I think it's fair. I think it's more than what Stamkos made on his bridge deal, which I think is totally fine given inflation and the rate the salary cap has been going up. 6.75 I think is a great number over the next 3 years. I think it makes our window a little bit bigger if we got tight with a couple contracts. I think the Stanley Cup window might have been a little bit narrower. I mean, case in point is what happened up in Chicago. You know, they won 3 cups over 5 or 6 years, but with everyone's salaries being inflated, they've had some challenges recently. I think they're on the up and coming, though. They've been able to grow their young core. So Chicago should be a name getting to the playoffs this year, hopefully. It'll be good to see the Hawks back. So, again, happy to see Brayden Point in the fold. When you're looking at where things fall in terms of contracts, Patrick Laine of the Winnipeg Jets just signed a very, very similar deal. They did a bridge contract. I want to say they only did 2 years at about $12.75 million, I think that was the figure I saw. So, again, right in line with Brayden Point. Patrick Laine, of course, was top 5 in goals, I want to say, last year, even top 3. I'd have to check those stats out to confirm. He was absolutely on fire last year for the Winnipeg Jets, so great signing. And I'm glad these players are choosing these team-friendly deals. You know, a lot of times it is players versus owners. Owners are trying to get the best value. Players are trying to watch out for themselves, especially when a lot of money isn't guaranteed in the NHL. An injury could put an end to lifetime earnings. We saw that with Savard out of Boston, one concussion, and he never played again. So definitely with the players that they need to protect themselves, they need to make as much money as they can, given the market conditions. But at the same time, I think the NHL is very special. I think the teams really do play for each other, and they really do. Winning the Stanley Cup, I don't think there's anything like it in sports. It's great seeing teams raise the Lombardi, teams raising the World Series trophy, but there's nothing better than seeing grown men cry, beards and all, scars and all, bruises and all, holding a 40-pound trophy over their heads after 2 months of competition. So, welcome to Brayden Point. We're happy you're here. Let's get this season going. Speaking about the season, haven't watched some highlights here and there of the preseason, more so following box scores and what's been going on. Of course, the first couple games you can't really give too much credence to, I guess, because we're really playing the young guys, guys that are going to be going back to juniors, guys that may not have a career in the NHL, but we're getting them to try out. First two games, of course, Lightning going scoreless, so that kind of a little bit of concern. And then as the starters started transitioning into their positions, we were still struggling a little bit to score. Thankfully, we got one or two wins on the board so far. Had a tough overtime loss in Nashville against the Predators. But I really think we're starting to come together. I was a little concerned with the Panthers game. Again, that was basically a starting lineup versus a starting lineup. And the Panthers are really getting the best of the Lightning. Vasilevsky and McElhenney not really looking human so far. But again, that's what the preseason's for, right? Let's get those kinks out. Let's get those stinkers of a game out. And let's get rolling for the regular season. So we're really excited for that. I don't know. I think we really have to think about it. And part of the predictions that we'll get to in a moment, John Cooper has the tools, and what I have a picture of him up here, is it's really on him now. He's gotten the tools. JBB has gotten him the infrastructure and players, and again, still such a strong minor league system. It's truly about execution, of course, by our players. I'm sure we're due to have a few down seasons for a few of our high performers. Maybe not as definitely nothing like last year where we were such a high performing team, like almost everyone overachieved. But it really comes down to coaching, and there's been a little bit of pressure on John Cooper's plate, or the hot seat, if you will, because he has on paper, he has a paper championship team. And we saw what happened in the first round last year. We've made some great runs, especially getting to the conference finals the year before. And, once you get past that first or second round, as we expect to, that conference championship and the Stanley Cup finals is just kind of a crapshoot. You really got to push through. Look, the St. Louis Blues were in literal last place on New Year's Day this past year in 2019, and they won the Stanley Cup finals. They won the Stanley Cup, so I love the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it's about getting into that conference final, and I really think that it's on coaching this year. It has to be, because again, we got your Stamkos, we got your Brayden Point, Sergachev, and Hedman. Hedman is playing at an elite level. Sergachev's going to be elite probably within the next year or two. As he develops as a defenseman. He's not even 21 years old. I couldn't believe that. He's the youngest player on the team, and he's still developing at a rate. I remember with Victor Hedman, season ticket holder, once he was drafted, and thinking he might have been kind of a bust. But I'm so glad I was wrong. I remember being at games yelling at Hedman, like, what are you doing? Hit someone. And, just really took a long time to understand that's not his game. Sure, he's physical, but he brings such a great offensive presence to the team, and it's been amazing to truly see him grow and become that top defenseman candidate year in, year out, and even winning a Norris Trophy 2 years ago. So that brings us to our predictions. Got a couple predictions over here. Yep, I'm good at the mirroring, right? Here to my right, your left, I think, if you're viewing. I think the first thing we have to prepare ourselves for is for some regression. I don't think we're gonna have 128 points or whatever it was we had in the standings last year, 130 something points, or be anywhere near the Canadiens' record back in the 60s or 70s, whenever they set that record. But I still expect the Lightning to win the division. That's one of my predictions. Not so much a bold prediction, but we should be up there. I'm looking 54, 55-ish wins, 20 losses, maybe 7 OTLs. Looking around the 115 to 117, 119 point range. It should be good enough to win the division. And honestly, maybe good enough to win the President's Trophy again this year. Part of me, of course, wants to avoid that. That President's Trophy curse is real. It's been such a long time since the team who actually won the President's Trophy won it all. So maybe we take some L's to push the President's Trophy elsewhere. I know the Washington Capitals and the San Jose Sharks love that President's Trophy love, and I love seeing them fail in the playoffs. So maybe we let them have a couple wins here and there, right? I do expect us to win the division. I think it's going to be a 3 or 4 pony race. The usual suspects, I think, depending on how Tuukka Rask plays this year and bounces back from a challenging year, we're going to see Boston up there. We're going to see the Maple Leafs up there. I think they're really pushing through. Their young core is developing. They've got a stellar coach in Babcock. It's going to be a really tight race. And I think that fourth contender for the playoffs and potentially even the division lead, I'm going to have to go with the Canadiens. I think they really underachieved last year. I think Carey Price was hurt first. They gave him a portion of the year. Game changer. When you have stellar goaltending, we saw that with Vasilevsky. I think we were fortunate that we had such great goal scoring, but we won some tight games because of that goaltending, and not having Carey Price in there really affected the Canadian style of play and really just caused them to miss the playoffs. I'm really interested in the performance of the Buffalo Sabres, and I think they're kind of my dark horse to make a run in the Atlantic Division, maybe snag that wild card spot, that last wild card spot to get in to the playoffs. I really like some of the moves they've made over the offseason. I think having Eichel and Skinner and shoring up their goaltending is going to play a big part. And as we'll see in the next segment, their 50th anniversary jerseys are amazing. I can't wait to show you those if you haven't seen them yet. Next prediction. I think our big breakout player is going to be Matthew Joseph this year. He showed signs of just so much speed and just on the cusp of breaking out. He had a couple tough breaks. Almost had that JT Brown type of... he worked so hard, but he couldn't put it in the net ever, and that's really what hurt JT Brown, I think, in the long run, and why he's kind of phasing out of the NHL. He just couldn't finish. I think Matthew Joseph finds a way to finish this year. I'm looking 20-plus goals, I want to say. Maybe 55-plus points, the 60-point range with some assists there. I am really counting on him to be one of our breakout players and to help produce, because, we've seen Andre Palat, and you'll see that a couple points down. Palat's been on the decline. I don't know. I'm hoping he has a bounce-back year this year. But again, kind of on the decline. Killorn has always been Mr. Johnny on the spot. I think he's so consistent, but we still want to be looking out at him. I think one thing we do have to consider is this is more than likely Tyler Johnson's last season with us, and I think that's for a few reasons. I don't know if the production is going to be there when you're looking 3 to 5 years. We have so many young guns ready to jump in those shoes, and he's a traditional center, but we have plenty of players who are hopping in and out of playing center. The NHL is becoming an even more versatile league where players are able to take face-offs and they'll play out on the wing. So it's really, you're able to plug and play. And when you have players like Sorelli getting ready to break out as well, I'd probably put him second to Matthew Joseph for having just a phenomenal year. Of course, some of our bigger recent signings and homegrown talent coming up. Again, I just think he's expendable, and if we are able to get something in return. One thing we do have to remember is that Seattle does have the expansion draft next year, and I think Tyler Johnson's a good fit for Seattle because that's where he's from. He's from the Seattle area. It'd be awesome for him to be part of that expansion, be one of their initial stars actually as Seattle comes into play in the next year or two into the NHL. So we're excited for the prospect of him moving back home, but it is a loss overall because I like seeing Tyler Johnson on there. It's been love hate. There's been some times where he has been down and not producing, but at the end of the day, he's one of our constants in the playoffs. Played with a broken hand. Anyone who does that gets my respect. So I think this is the last season we'll see Johnson, whether he's traded, whether we do a under the table deal with Seattle for them not to take one of our other players off of what's exposed for the draft. I think we'll have to wait and see. And again, I wanted to reiterate, the eyes are going to be on, I think, Killorn and Palat. Palat for production and to see if he can bounce back after a tough year with some injuries, and Killorn just to make sure that he's staying consistent on that third, fourth line presence where he'll hop in and out. So I think the eyes, for me, I want to make sure that we're looking at Palat and see what we're getting there. Hopefully he can build some value over the year, and maybe he becomes expendable at the trade deadline. I hope not. I've liked Palat, and I've liked watching him come up through the system with, the triplets and coming up with Kucherov and Johnson, and it's been, it'll be a sad day seeing Palat go, especially some of these young kids as they're getting older, and we have just such a great talent depth. Yanni Gord, I think, is another guy who, again, homegrown, got in and got his bridge deal, but I don't know. I just don't know if there's room for Palat on this team past next year. And I think it's time that we make a smart move, get some draft picks, maybe get some additional grittiness for the playoffs. I really think that he might be someone who's on the move along with Johnson. And Killorn, maybe to a degree, if we're looking to trade deadline 6 months from now, he might be someone that could build high enough value that may be expendable. I'd rather he'd be on my low end to get rid of, because I think he's gritty and we need him in the playoffs. But when we're looking at predictions, I think Palat's a candidate and Johnson is one as well, whether we trade or whether we kind of make a deal with Seattle. And the last prediction, you see the asterisk, and we talked about it a little bit before. Bolts win the cup? ? Asterisk. Again, we are paper champions. We have the talent. It's about execution now. I expect us to take a few steps back. We're definitely not going to win 60 games this year. And if you expect that, then put your foot on the brakes a little bit. Let's be realistic. Let's take a few steps back. Let's make sure that we're not pushing the team, because I think that's what happened in the first round against Columbus. We ran out of steam. We had been going for this record of points, and we kept pushing and pushing. And I think, like good hockey players do, they want to play the game. So we just overplayed instead of resting, and it was just a recipe for disaster in round one against Columbus. So Bolts win the cup ? Is going to be about execution. It's about making a few more moves come trade acquisition time or trade deadline time, because Lightning just don't have that grittiness to get through the playoffs. Our offensive stars, I'm looking at you, Cooch, get very frustrated very easily once they get some physicality going. It's something that we don't see as much in the regular season, but when it's playoff time and you are playing for the right to lift that trophy, you better believe it's going to get a lot more physical, a lot more tight. And Kucherov doesn't seem to adjust very well to that. Stamkos, to a degree, does a disappearing act every once in a while in the playoffs as well. So, again, we got to change that mindset. We are a great regular season team, but how are we going to get over that hump? It's so difficult to predict what happens over an 82-game season. There's injuries, there's chemistry, you just don't know. But I expect us to get through this 82 games fairly well. Again, barring catastrophic injury to win the division. But again, it's what happens after those first two rounds. No question, the Lightning should get through those first two rounds of the playoffs, just like last year. They should have beaten Columbus, and who would they have played? Maybe Carolina, maybe Boston. That would have been a tougher series, but they should have gotten through those two rounds to face. Was it Carolina this year? That's right. But even if it's someone like your Washingtons, there's no reason why we shouldn't be thinking about getting into the conference finals, and that really being the place where physicality comes to play, and it's a toss-up. Sometimes we just don't know what happens. You just get outplayed in a series, and it is what it is. So, Bolts win the cup? Question mark. It's not my cop-out, I promise you. I truly think we can win the cup, but at the same time, we do need to be cognizant of the other factors and making sure that JBB gets the job done, getting some moves and a little bit of grittiness. We talked about it last week. I love the Pat Maroon signing. I love the Kevin Shattenkirk signing. I think those are great playoff competitors. So I think we're getting ready for the run. I'm excited. And let's close it out with Jersey Watch. One of my favorite websites, if you've never been there before, especially if you're a big hockey fan of jerseys. I mean, there's nothing better than a hockey sweater, and the history of jerseys and team colors and city colors is amazing. If you've never been to aesthetics.com, the owner or the person who runs the site, Chris, fellow Lightning fan, I've always wanted to meet him. I think he moved over to Seattle, so he's really excited about the expansion project up in Seattle. But I know near and dear he's a big Lightning fan. But he's put this history almost like a uni watch specifically for hockey. He's put an amazing website and product together. Make sure to check it out. Concepts are in there. If you're an artist or a graphic designer and like designing hockey jerseys, make sure you're submitting concepts. They usually have a concept of the day and stuff like that. So I wanted to highlight some of my favorite jerseys that came out over the season. And some of these I hadn't even seen until, I was getting my mind ready for hockey season. So upper left-hand corner, or upper right-hand corner, you'll see the Blues. The Blues bringing back the 1990s era jerseys with the red. I am so excited for that. This is one of the last jerseys Wayne Gretzky ever wore. The blue and the red and the yellow St. Louis Blues jerseys. I'm really excited for those, bringing those back on a kind of a throwback basis. Right next to that, I love the Calgary Flames like fire red jerseys, and I'm glad they made the reverse, the away whites with the big red C, clean jersey with the yellow, red, and white. I've always loved the Flames' old look. I don't mind the black C for as much. I think that's a strong jersey, but their red and their white old school 80s circa jerseys and early 90s jerseys I think are among the best in the league that have ever existed. Boston going with a kind of a faux throwback with the old school B, no spoke and wheel. Not a bad effort. It's a cool traditional looking jersey. I'm a fan. Under the Boston jersey, the Kings bringing back the Wayne Gretzky 1990s model jerseys, the whites with the Los Angeles Kings kind of logo in the middle, again from the Wayne Gretzky days in LA. Nice clean jersey. Most controversial one, I think, among the hockey community was the new Oilers alternate jersey. So if you remember a year or two ago, as they moved to their new arena, they brought back the orange as their primary color instead of the navies or the royal blues. Kind of a callback to the WHL days. And I love these jerseys. I think there's a lot of hate for them out there. I look kind of like a monochromatic jersey. Looks a little bit like a Bears hockey jersey, right? A Chicago Bears jersey, but I think it looks awesome. Just the orange and the navy with the dripping Oilers jersey, the logo. I think that looks clean as heck. Jets bringing back their traditional jerseys from the 80s and 90s, going a little bit darker with the darker navy and the red. I think that, again, that looks great. It's going to be a great Heritage Classic outdoor game. Jets playing the Flames. What do we got? We got the Vancouver Canucks, lower right-hand side. Finally getting rid of the Vancouver word mark. That drove me nuts for so many years. Like, yes, we know you're from Vancouver. No need to put Vancouver on there in, size 100 font. We get it. You're from Vancouver. You're proud. Glad it's gone. They kept the flying orca, of course, with the C for Canucks. Yeah, with the ice trail, which I like, or the water trail, I guess, on the white jerseys. And the third jersey with the old 70s Canuck logo, I really like, with the thick green stripes. Looks sharp to me. And most excited for bringing back the Stanley Cup 1990s Pavel Bure circa black, red, and yellow jerseys. Kind of a Team Germany jersey with the old Canucks logo. One of my favorites is the Buffalo Sabres 50th anniversary. I can't believe it's only been 50 years in Buffalo. I feel like they're one of the teams that have existed for a long, long time. They are going with some sweet white threads with gold accents instead of the typical yellow. So where yellow was, they're going with gold. So, man, the logo looks great with the gold Buffalo and the gold Sabres. They also announced that they're going full-time to royal blue next year for their 51st season. So instead of that navy with the weird silver reflection striping they had, they're going back to the royal blues of the 80s and 90s. So that's really exciting for me. Much better look. I'm not so much for these darker colors as primaries. It's nice to have a little popping color. And then kind of a weird jersey, and I think it's a positive move, but the Hurricanes going with redoing their away jerseys and going with Canes. I'm okay with it. I'm glad that they brought back the Hurricane flags borders on the bottom. I think their home jersey is really nice. I should have put a picture on there for comparison. It's kind of growing on me. I think if we have any Carolina fans out there, it'd be nice to hear what you think with the new Canes word mark going down across diagonally on the chest. I think it looks sharp. I think it looks better than what they had before with the swirling toilet bowl jersey with the red shoulder pads and then no real creative border or striping going around. So, quick look at the jerseys. That brings us to the end of Thunderdome Puckcast episode 2. Thank you so much for listening and sticking it out with us. So excited to get this going on YouTube. And we'll have a Puckcast probably, hopefully next week, previewing the regular season. And if not, maybe getting into the weekend after Game 1 or Game 2 as reactions to the first games of the NHL season for the Bolts. You've seen the ticker down below. We'll always keep the previous 3 games, the next 3 games coming up, and the Atlantic Division standings as we get to playoff time. We'll make sure to get some wildcard standings in there as well, and rotate some general news from the other teams in the league. Because as much as we love the Lightning, we know the Lightning aren't the other team, and there's always big hockey stories going on. So make sure to give me a follow on Twitter at $10 Sports, and Mike's on there as well at Balls Bros Brews all together. See it down below. Balls Brews Bros. I always get that incorrect. So at Balls Brews Bros. Follow Mike on Twitter, and make sure you are hitting subscribe and like on our videos. We appreciate it so much. It's been Moose with the Thunderdome Puckcast. Have a great day.